Hello,
Look.
and welcome to our second episode of I'm Here.
What? Who's
I'm
here?
here.
What's up? We made it.
I know, it's crazy. We just filmed one yesterday, and now here we are again.
Yeah. Awesome. So, I'm doing good, girl.
I didn't even have to ask. Yay.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited. So today we got so you brought this on. This one came from Gabi, right?
Yeah.
So mental health, right?
Yes.
We're talking about mental health
Absolutely.
and families' responses to it.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes they can't be so great. Sometimes they're not that great.
And just really our experiences, because everybody's life is so different. And that's what the cool thing is. We just get to share our story and figure ourselves out as we share our stories and learn from each other and learn from everybody else, right? So everybody's story is going to be different.
Yep.
We're just sharing ours and connecting through that.
Yeah.
Mental health is big.
You would know because you're you're a counselor, so you deal with that all the time. I mean, we all deal with mental health all the time, but you deal with it like
in a different capacity.
Yeah,
man. So all right, so I finished counseling, my counseling program at school. I graduated in 2014.
that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. But girl, it's kind of like 6 years ago. So when you think about it, for real.
I didn't even think about that. I didn't realize how many years it's been. It's 2020.
Yes. Well, I mean, being in quarantine, it feels like 5 years in the past 2 months.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
legit.
Absolutely. It's been crazy.
But it's like a whole different capacity of just being on the opposite side. But when you brought this up, I was like, oh, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to family. Yeah. So when I think of just bringing up counseling and how the family reacted, I remember when I studied psychology period in undergrad, and I decided that that's what I was going to study. I remember the family's reaction of well, girl, you're not going to do nothing with that. That was initially the first response of, you need to have a second, backup plan or a plan B, because you're not going to do anything with a psychology degree.
That was so interesting, because when I think about it, I think of people who are studying the arts, and then sometimes their parents, I know some of my friends are studying music, and some of their friends are like, why can't you study something practical like psychology? So it's so interesting to hear that different perspective.
Oh, and it wasn't everybody. I have to be for real. It wasn't everybody, but that was the big response of well, psychology, you can't really do anything with that. So, and granted, I think everybody was disappointed that I was not an engineer or an architect.
No. I mean, you're smart enough to do it. I don't know. I mean, if it's your thing, you can do it.
That's crazy. So that was my first, because when I grew up, we didn't really do counseling. It's not as big as it is now. There's a big push of accepting and breaking the stigma, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. But this is very new. This is really just the past few years. So counseling, I didn't even know what that was. I remember people studying psychology when I was in high school, and I didn't even know what that was, because that was not part of my world. I didn't know what a therapist was, what a counselor was. That was not something that was talked about or we were open about.
Yeah.
I think I remember when I was little and younger, I remember when we would talk about mental health in the family, it was just our distant relatives, lo loquito del monte,
yeah, the crazy ones.
Yes, and then they wouldn't say the crazies. They're like the little crazies, like the loquitos. Like it was almost like you're gonna bring it down a notch. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they're family. We love them. We go visit them, but you're just a little off. There's
Yeah.
something, there. Um,
I'm laughing
and
because
now
I
I
do
think about it,
remember
man.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so from my experience, I remember first talking about counseling and going to therapy for the family was when my dad died, when papi died.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even for us, like mommy was going through her depression, but there was no admitting it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to church, I'm going to pray, um, and I'm going to seek spiritual guidance, but no counseling for grief,
Mm.
for depression that came after. And I didn't even know it, like I also was just like, oh, she's just sad because she lost her husband, but I didn't really understand it was depression until years later.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and for me either, like it was just like, oh well, this is just it was hard, it was bad. I was 19 when puppy died. It was a big shock. And we didn't expect it. That was not something that happened in our family at that time. Like he was the first one to really suddenly leave like that.
Mhm.
Just a sudden crazy death. But it was almost like, all right, we're praying, we're together, we're family, and there was no even like a thought of counseling being needed.
Yeah.
The only time that it came into our minds was when we were dealing with also because he was 7 when Papi died.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even initially, it was like months afterwards, seeing how it impacted him in school and just dealing with all of like the sadness and the struggle. And anytime like he was working in school on homework, I remember he would just be he was like in 2nd grade, he's doing homework and he would get frustrated like kids do
Mhm.
and break down and cry because he's overwhelmed, and we're thinking, oh, it's just schoolwork. And then he's just crying and he's like, I miss dad, I miss dad, I miss Papi. And we're like,
Mhm.
oh, this is deeper than what we understood it to be.
Yeah.
um, and being able to like talk to mom and be like, I think he needs a counselor. And I remember being in college studying psychology, looking into all of these different programs that were available at home, and giving mom resources like these are different options, that they have grief counseling for kids and parents. So it's almost like I did a little sneak attack,
Yeah.
like, hey, he needs it, but these are parent child things,
Yeah,
so
so
like
you
they have a
have to go with them, It's just like part of it.
yes, you'll learn things too, how to help him, so it'll be good for you to just be there to support him, because that was the only way she'll accept help,
Mhm.
as if I'm doing it for somebody else, because I don't need the help, but he does. And I remember like once they would go to those groups, she came to a point where she was like, you know what? I really think those groups are more for me than for him. I think I'm getting more out of it than he does.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? Really? But they were like support groups, right? But that's almost like the theme and the experiences throughout. Because even like as I went and studied counseling, um, and in counseling, like in my program, they always recommend you get your own counseling. And
Mhm.
in the back of my head, I was like, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. I would like, and almost like, I was like, I don't know what I would talk about. That's my mentality. I don't know what I would talk about. But it would be nice to kind of go and to see what happens. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong, there's nothing going on, but it would be nice to experience what it is like so I could understand and learn more. You're
There's
shaking your head.
nothing wrong here. I'm
Well, I
good.
didn't know. It's like all these blind spots.
Yeah.
Because this is like you're enveloped in this like dysfunction for so long that you like the way I grew up and the way I thought about things was there's nothing wrong with us. There's something wrong with the rest of the world.
I'm laughing. I'm rolling my eyes because I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. That's literally how we were raised. It's like
Yes.
it's the other people that have the issue. What we're doing here is normal. What we're doing here is healthy. They're the wrong ones. and the good people sometimes are, they say the good people are a small quantity. These majority is not, it's bad. Not bad. It wasn't, it was protective, but
Yeah.
with good
I didn't
intentions.
realize how dysfunctional our family was until I moved away. When I moved down to Florida at 21, like after I graduated college, I was like, oh, I'm out. Um, now I
I'm
now I
sorry.
see how
I'm just imagining moving out right now. I'm 22 and I'm like, if I moved out last year, I would have been cool. I don't know how you did it. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. God.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Because I was never visited Florida. I only visited once to like see the campus and like to see grad school. Knew nobody who lived here, had no friends over here, but I'm like, sounds like a good idea. I'm going to move across the country. I'm gonna go to Florida. Uh,
That's amazing.
so yeah, I didn't realize how like much the family's thoughts and that simple message of you can't trust anybody outside of the family. Like we're the only ones who understand you. How much that impacted me in an unhealthy way. Because I came down here and I was so lost. I didn't know how to socialize. I didn't know how to make friends on my own. I didn't know how to do anything that was normal for a young adult.
Mm-hmm.
What I did know was to hustle and to study. So I got into school, I went and hustled and I worked 2 different jobs. I went to grad school, I made it work. I was always working, and that's where I focused. And I couldn't for the life of me understand why I was not developing friendships or couldn't live a normal life. And it was just so much of that. Don't trust anybody outside of your
Yeah.
family. Only people who understand you are your family. And now who am I without my family? That was big. But I didn't realize that it was a problem. I thought, oh, well, it's just going to take time and it's me. And then when I went back home to visit, I was so happy because I miss my family. But I also realized I started seeing things in a different way. I'm like, why? Like, why are you so scared to do that? Why are you scared to and I'm looking at my family members who I thought this was so normal. I'm like, why are you talking to each other that way? Why
Yeah.
are you so scared to ask the server for a menu? You're grown adults. And all of these things, now that I had moved myself from the situation and come back to it, I'm like, this is not okay.
Yeah.
This is not okay. And I just started noticing these things, and I started, as I'm going through my counseling program, I'm working on reflecting on myself, and it became counseling pretty much for me. At that point, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, all these aha moments, like, what? You use I statements to communicate to people? What? Boundaries? What?
What are boundaries?
This, oh my gosh, it was like all of these ahas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I just had some skill deficits. And now I have skills, you know? So it wasn't until like 2 years after I graduated from my counseling program that I actually did start therapy for myself. There
Wow.
was always an excuse of, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, like there's no real big issue here. But again, it's like all of those messages that we learned of like dismissing that need to take care of ourselves,
Yes.
that you could just fix it on your own. There's really no need. And again, I just went to counseling because I had, again, issues in my relationships, in just talking to people and being vulnerable and being open and not having this guard up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't for the life of me understand why I wasn't connecting. And I didn't see that there was this big avoidance and fear of people, like social anxiety, and just having like that being a block, and not understanding that. So I remember finally going and having like all of these ahas, like with my therapist, and I'm like, what? And it was like one point she told me, this is a problem because you won't even tell me these things.
Yep.
I'm the therapist. She's
Yeah.
like, I'm the one person you're supposed to be able to tell everything to. And I'm like,
I had the same problem in therapy too. I didn't tell them about my actual problems until maybe like 2 years in, so that was bad. But hey, at least you did it eventually, right?
What do you mean it was bad?
It was bad because I I was like pretending I was okay every time I went to counseling, where I would go and then I would just be, because I didn't really do counseling growing up either. Um,
Which is
I
crazy.
yeah.
In my head, it's so crazy that you didn't do counseling when you were growing up.
Yeah, because like with my mom having cancer and everything, like I thought, yeah, you would think that I would have some sort of support in terms of like professional help, but no. I actually did at one point for a couple of weeks. I did have a counselor, but I wasn't told it was a counselor. So my entire life, looking back at it, I just figured, oh, Dr. Tony, the lady who just sat down with me in this room and she put on like nice music and she talked to me about my feelings. I never put two and two together until I was like
Mm.
freshman year of college. I was like, wait, because like they asked me, like, because that was the first time I started going to counseling again. They asked me again. They were like, when was the last time you went to counseling? And I was like, never. And then I thought about it. It was like, wait, this was a counselor? And then I had to ask
Right.
my
It's
dad.
like
And I was
all
like,
these things
wait,
going through your.
Papi. I was like, I had to ask my dad. I was like, wait, was Dr. Tony a counselor? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, how did you not tell me? And he was like, well, I thought you just knew. And I was like, I didn't know. I was 11. I had no idea that I was going to a counselor. But yeah, I had the same problem in counseling where I couldn't open up because
Yeah.
I felt like I had to be okay all the time, even in counseling. The whole point of it was to dig deep into those wounds and heal. And I didn't want to, almost, because I was like in denial that they were even there.
Yeah, we
So
don't even face it ourselves. It's just like, I
exactly, it's
have
like, I'm
feelings.
fine. Yeah, I kept saying I'm fine. And so every time I went in, I would talk about things that weren't even the main problem. And then eventually, that's why I say it was bad, because it wasn't until like 2 years into, or a year and a half into counseling, that I like mentioned what was actually bothering me. And then my counselor just stared at me and like, oh, okay. And I could tell that it was like a big deal. And I was like, oh, I should have mentioned that a long time ago. So
Yeah, we tend to minimize the things that are really important because we skirt around them. It's just like, oh, just, school or work, and this talk about anything but the real reason. And sometimes
yeah.
we don't even know what it is, to be honest. Like, I think it takes time for us to realize it because we have this guard for so long that we have our own blind spots.
Yes.
Um, but I remember like going, oh man, I remember like just like reaching out to the counselor and just sending the text of like, or, like just calling, and I had to leave her a message. Then I sent a text.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that sending a message like for the first time and admitting like, oh my, I want counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get a response for actually a couple days. That was like the most anxiety I had felt in so long. Like I remember, and this was years ago, but I remember like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna start. I have to talk about feelings. Like this whole thing,
Yeah.
I ran so much that time. Like during those days, I ran so much because when I deal with anxiety, I run away. Like I literally run away.
Yeah, that's a good way of dealing with it, though.
Oh man, I ran so much, and I couldn't identify that it was anxiety because I have to talk about my feelings. I thought, oh, it's work, it's friends, it's all these things.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm stressing out, but
Mm-hmm.
it was that because once the counselor called me and I was just like freaking out about it,
Yeah.
and then she was so nice on the phone. But it's just scary to even admit it.
It
So
is.
we don't even see these blind spots. But I remember when I mentioned it and I was kind of proud of myself. I was like, oh, I'm going to counseling. Like, I'm going to counseling. I'm finally doing it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the response was like, why? I mean, and it was just like so careful of just like, I mean, I don't want to say anything, but why? Like, there's something wrong,
Oh
right?
my
Like that's
gosh.
almost.
Uh Well, do you read the I always get the, but you seem so okay. But you're fine.
Yeah, and
That's what I get.
that's literally what we've been telling ourselves. Like we're fine because everybody else is telling us you're fine.
Yeah.
You're like, you're good. What is, and it's almost like, again, that own stigma of there has to be something wrong for you to actually ask for help. And something has to be visibly wrong. Like there has to be something off with you,
Yeah.
for you to ask for help. There's so much shame in it, that, I received. And it was almost like, I remember, like, it was a simple question of like, why? And like trying to be guarded with it and be careful with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to insult you. I don't want to be in your business, but this is weird. So what's going on? Why
Yeah.
are you going in there? Um, and it's almost like it's okay for everybody else to get counseling, but a lot of the family members just like, so when you
Yeah.
actually say, I want to get it for myself, it's just like a big,
Yeah.
like, mind blown.
Eh. uh, I got really mad this one time about all of this. It was a couple of months ago, and I like picked up my journal and I just journaled for like 2 hours about this because I was just I it was just a lot of frustration, but never like anger towards the people. It was just like, I wish I could help you with that anxiety that causes you to feel so on guard, because I get it. I've been there. So it was one of those things where I was like, I wish I could fight your anxiety for you. Like whenever I look at the family, um, because it's so frustrating. I know that a lot of the time when we're told you're okay, it's because that's what they've been telling themselves their whole lives because they want to be okay. And the same, especially when someone who has the same mental health issues as you see you going through it, it almost brings about this sense of frustration in themselves because they see themselves in you. That's something I've noticed a lot throughout the years. And I didn't come to realize that until I was in college. And like you said, being away and having that distance and seeing how the world works outside of the family, and then seeing the family, and it was a lot of reflection, like self-reflection, which I'm constantly doing, like you said, and also reflection, like looking at the family and being like, okay, like empathizing and not getting frustrated with them, because it's like, okay, you're saying this, but I know that you're saying this out of love. You must be saying this out of experience, so you probably also understand where I'm coming from, even though it's not being expressed, if that makes any sense, in a way
Yeah.
that I would see as like empathetic in a way. But I think that happens to a lot of people because it's not just our family. Because I'm one of my closest and best friends is constantly, like, we're always texting, and she has this issue with her mom and connecting with her mom about mental health, because she also it has been diagnosed with depression, and then she's also going, like, her mom and her are both going through that. And it's just so frustrating because she needs to tell her and open up and be honest to her, but then her mom's response a lot of the time is, oh, you're okay, you can just do it, you just got to get out of your funk, this is just a funk, you can do it, this is, you're just feeling lazy, you're being lazy. And then that hurts her, and it's hard for her to express that. So
Yeah.
I was so excited when we were going to talk about this topic, because I know that that's like not just something we go through, like that is something so many people deal with. And I don't even know, I just wish I could give them a big hug.
It's like magic hugs that just fix everything, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes it so hard too, is just like we have that mentality of we just get through it. A lot of people is just like, get through it. Like, I can, if I just, I like, we tell ourselves those stories of like, it's just a phase, or I'm just going to get through it. It's funk, or it's just a stage, not realizing how deep it is.
Yeah.
So we tell ourselves those same stories, and we wished for that quick fix because healing is really uncomfortable, and I have to face all of my own faults and belief systems and really get in there and work through it. So it's uncomfortable, and I think sometimes with our families, they want us to be okay. They don't want to see us suffer or struggle. So they want to do a quick fix, like, you're fine, you're fine. And what you said too is big time. It's just like, we're mirrors of each other, especially when we're in families and just communities of what I see in you are things that I struggle with myself, and I don't know how to handle it, so I want to shoo it. I want to
Yeah.
shoo it, and it's or even as we're going into and like walking in our power and recognizing and healing, the fact that you're healthy now points out the fact that I still haven't done my own inner work.
Yeah.
So it's challenging and frustrating, and it's recognizing like everybody has their own path and journey and has their own time of coming to it. But it is still a big struggle to see people you love suffer, knowing that
Yeah.
being able to accept help is available. It's
Hmm.
available. I did have a question.
Yeah.
When it came, because like we're talking about counseling, but when it comes to like medication, because I know
Yes.
we're dealing with anxiety,
Hmm.
um, sometimes the medication is important. And I know for you, that was
Hmm.
something that you realized was needed.
Yeah.
So how was that for you? Because I know we're all about in the family, drink a tea,
Oh
just,
my
take a nice,
gosh.
or smell some lavender, or ponte
Smell.
Vicks.
Put on some Vicks. It fixes everything. It cures your depression. Or go pray, and that's the only solution.
Yeah.
Um. Oh my goodness. I I was not greeted with a lot of support from the family, unfortunately. Um, my my extended family, the closer family, the tight knit over here with Papi and Luigi,
Your
they were,
household members, like
yeah,
your
my
immediate family
house
who
would,
saw you struggle every day.
yes, they were all for it from the beginning. My
Mm,
dad, Luigi, they both, my brother,
yeah.
they were both like, have you considered medication? And I was like, no, I'm fine. I don't need medication. Medication is not for me. It's for people that really need it. Like, I wasn't seeing all of my struggles. Um and
Foresee.
so when I was going to counseling, and that's actually interesting that you brought that up, because I was going to talk about it, especially when we were talking about opening up and telling our counselor how we're feeling about everything and like how hard it is at first. um I had been going through a lot of severe anxiety for a very long time, and then when I finally opened up to my counselor about it, about my health anxiety, that's what brought it. And like, when I brought it up to my counselor, she said, you're going through this every day? And she just kind of looked at me like
Mm.
that, and like she looked so worried. And I said, yeah, I
That's
have
the
been.
scariest thing when your counselor's worried about you. You're like, wait a minute, this is not normal.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I told her, and then she was like, I was like saying, I'm so convinced that I have X, Y, and Z, which I think will be for a different episode. But health anxiety. I could talk a lot about that. But yeah, I was feeling all these sensations in my body. I was feeling so
Mhm.
tired. I was feeling like I couldn't do anything, but I was feeling awful at the same time. And I was convinced that I had MS. I was convinced that I had like
And
all of these different, and it was like for a year I was convinced I had all of these different um
physical issues.
physical issues, because I was like, anxiety can't do this, anxiety can't do that, because my entire life I've been told anxiety's in your head, it's not out here. And so when I was getting like tingling sensations throughout my body, that was terrifying. The only thing I could find, never Google anything, that's like 100%, don't Google your symptoms, because Google is not your doctor. But yeah,
Yo.
I thought I was going crazy. I went to the ER multiple times, and this is all what led me to get to the medication, because I had over 6 um different blood works done, or blood tests done
Labs, I
on
guess.
me. Yeah, on me over 3 months, which is not normal. And it was because I was convinced there was something wrong with me, which, I mean, I was kind of right. But it was
Well,
it
it makes sense too, just thinking of like our family history. Like
yeah.
there, when we started, because we we even avoid physical illness. We're like, you don't need a doctor. The doctor's just gonna inject poison in
Oh
you.
my
Da, da, da,
gosh.
da, da.
Ah,
Right?
I'm gonna cry. Oh no, that's a different conversation, right?
Yeah, but it's just like we neglect all of those things. So it makes sense that you were worried
Yeah,
that it was physical, because we have a lot of physical history that
yeah,
has led to death.
exactly. And actually, that happened right after Paco died. So it like started right after our uncle he suddenly died
An
from
aneurysm.
an aneurysm. So it was like understandable, but it was interesting because I mentioned it to my counselor very casually, but it took everything in me to finally mention it to her. And then that's when she realized that it was way more that I had been talking about. And then she finally was like, listen, I think you would benefit from medication. And my initial response was no. Even with panic attacks, even with everything I was going through, with like feeling like I was dying every single day, I still was like, no, I don't want medication. And then she asked me why, and she was talking to me about it. And it was so bad to the point where I even got a new counselor because I was so frustrated. And that was not the response that I feel like I should have had, because she really helped me. But I was so frustrated because like my family's always said like everything should be natural. You should, try harder. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. Those were all the things I kept telling myself. I just need to just pray. And I felt like I didn't have enough faith. I felt like I didn't have enough willpower. I felt like I was lazy. All of these negative things because I was told I could get over it if I just tried. And so it wasn't until a long while later I had to take a leave of absence because I couldn't take like the physical weight of that anxiety, that crippling anxiety and depression was so bad where I couldn't even get out of bed to go to school. And I am so passionate about school that that's not normal. So I took that leave of absence. And that's when I was like, when we came back last year, that's when I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to try medication. I tried the first one. And it wasn't for me. And then I tried a second one and it also wasn't for me. It took a while to get to the right one. But in that process, I was having all these doubting voices in my head. But not just in my head, they were also out here.
There were real voices coming at
real
you.
Voices. I remember when I don't remember who it was, but I was telling one of our aunts that they were like, oh, how's school? How is it going? How are you? And then that was like around the time I had to take my first leave of absence.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's okay. It's not that great. I've been going to counseling, but I think that I need to start taking antidepressants. And that was like the devil to them. Like literally, they're like, what? Medicina ni medicina. Tú no necesitas nada. Like they were like, you don't need any medicine. What? Why would you need
that? It's almost like a betrayal to them, like an insult.
Like frustration, like anger. Like there was like genuine anger in their voice. And it was like almost like a joke to them at first. It was like, what? Ha, you don't need that. Like you can do it. You can get over it. And that at first, I listened to them. At first, I denied
Well, because they're your elders and you just learn. I was like, oh, they must be right. And there was part of you already who felt that. You're like, maybe I don't need it,
Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, maybe I am. I thought it was all about being stronger, but it's not. Like, I thought that I was just weak and that was not what they meant to do, but that's what came along with it. Those were the connotations that came with those words. Like, try harder. You can do it. You're not trying hard enough. You're not praying hard enough. That one was very frustrating because at that time, like, I was going to church literally every single day and praying my anxiety, trying to pray my anxiety away. I was like, I like my like, and I sound exaggerated, but like, you know how like when you're so anxious and to the point where I was, where my limbs actually hurt because I was so like tight all the time that my knees were like hurting from like being on like just kneeling, cause praying. And one time I was on the phone with one of
girl, that hits my heart right here. Like I feel it heavy. It's just like I want to cry. Like,
oh, it's okay. You can cry. You are here. I am here. I am here podcast to cry. But and so I was on like one time I just couldn't take it anymore. And I literally just got up and I was on the phone with one of our aunts. And I don't even know. I just don't know why I called her. And I just said, hey, I'm taking medication. I don't know why I had to do that. I didn't have to.
But there was a part of you that wanted to just like own it and be like, this is it. I made a decision and that's it.
Yeah. and I prayed a lot about it, and it's so interesting because I have this app on my phone that's like little notifications like Bible verses every day, and it was so interesting because I kept getting notifications like every time I was thinking about taking meds, and I was like, I don't know if I should do this, and then I got like one notification that was like, do not be afraid, blah 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 blah, the Lord will help you through it, and I was like, whoa, okay, and it was like multiple times that it happened, and that's when I was like, you know what, I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to, and
Yeah.
it was so frustrating watching people like wake up and get out of their bed and do what they wanted to do. Oh, that, like, I'm getting goosebumps now because like I remember distinctly sitting like with my roommate, and she was such an active person. She's like so she's just like so healthy. And 7 o'clock, alarm goes off. She gets up, she goes to the gym, she comes back, she makes food, she does her homework, she calls her mom, goes to class, comes back, and that entire time I was laying in bed. That entire time her side of the room clean. I love to keep my room clean. Well, don't look now, but not right now because I'm busy. But
Hashtag real talk.
but like I was like so frustrated, and I wasn't mad at her, and she knows that.
I remember you telling me that story, and you're just like in bed, like with your blanket, looking at her. You're like, "Wow, it's so easy for her.
Yeah.
Is this how people live?"
Yeah, and it was crazy because like we would have like bedside conversations too, where like at night where we were falling asleep and then we'd talk about it, and then she was like, "Are you okay? Were you feeling okay today?" and whatever. She's so nice, and then I would have to explain to her, "This is what I feel physically," and she was heartbroken, and she told me, "I never feel that," and she was like realizing how much of a struggle it was for me to get out of bed, and she was like in awe, and then she's like, is there anything that you can do for it? And then those were the things that led me to medication, that made me realize, okay, this isn't normal.
There's
These
a
voices.
possibility of not living like this. Like it's
Exactly.
almost like that aha, like I don't have to live like this. Because I think sometimes, as we were talking about, when we're surrounded with people who are struggling with the same thing, we almost accept it as this is just how the world is. This is how bodies work. This is how my body works. This is how everybody works. We all just struggle to get out of bed. We all just struggle to get things done.
Yeah.
Everybody deals with this. Everybody's just like out of, and we realize, oh, there's a whole different world out there. There's a
Yeah.
lot of it that is genetic, but there's a lot of it that we learn too, of just like, if I live in a depressed household, I pick up on those things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I that's the model that I have. And then just being outside of that and seeing how other people live and having that conversation, being that open and vulnerable, you realize, whoa, there's a possibility that I can live a life not struggling to get out of bed, that I can manage my emotions, that I actually can complete things.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but it's mind-boggling, and it's so foreign when you like grow up like that.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's hard, especially if that's everything you know, and especially especially with like our family too, with the idea of everyone else is wrong.
Yeah.
That just goes into it
So
too.
paranoid. Like
Yeah, it is paranoia. Yeah, it's true. It's just like, okay, this is the normal thing. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. This is normal, this is normal. You just don't notice that you're going through the same thing, like those were the things that I kind of had in my head, but it's a lot.
and now, like, with your, like, you're still on the medication, right? You're
Yes.
still taking it? Yeah.
Yes.
And how are you now?
I'm doing good.
Because like now looking back at that, like now looking back at the struggle and just being able to
Yeah.
like accept the fact that this is something that you may need,
Mhm.
how is that different for you right now? Like,
It's so crazy. Okay, so I journal every day, or I try to journal every day. And when I was going through everything I was talking about earlier with like my leave and everything and the panic attacks, I would write everything down. Everything I felt, because that was the only way, like the way you said that you ran, the way
Yeah.
that was my version of running. Like writing was my version of running. So I would have to sit down and just like write and write and write. And it was so interesting because like a couple weeks ago, like we're in quarantine, there's nothing much to do. I was looking through my old journals, and I actually started crying reading them because my lettering, like my handwriting was so sloppy from how fast I was writing, how desperate I was writing, how frustrated I was. And like in them, there were like letters to myself that were like, future self, I hope that you're not feeling the way I am right now. Or like there were like letters that said, I might die tomorrow and I don't know if I will or not. You know, like I was like convinced that this anxiety was gonna like, you know, because I genuinely thought there was like a crazy like chronic illness that I was going through. It was like that paranoia. And so reading that back was crazy. Like I cried because I don't feel that anymore.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not just the medication. Of course, it was counseling too. It's like counseling combined with medication, but the medication was needed for me in order to get to that point because it calmed my nerves down. It calmed my physical aspect of my anxiety down to a point where I could control it at least a little bit more. And
Mm.
so like looking back, I'm so glad that I made the decision of going to counseling, one, made the decision of taking medication too, because I just think to myself, if I wouldn't have gone to counseling and I would have had all of that feeling like
Yeah.
continuously, I wouldn't never have known that there was another way to live. So
Yeah, girl, you up there on stage, you be singing, you be rocking out. I'm like, who is this girl? Like, what? Oh, she's taking over the world. Look at her being all like social and hanging out and putting herself out there.
social, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, what? And it was nuts. Like, it was a matter of months. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
she's working for, and I like, like part of it, like I understand part of your story and just like the waves and the struggle. I don't know all of the details, but like enough. And I'm like, it was such a transformation. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I know you've been working and hustling and struggling to like take care of yourself. And it was just like seeing it
I'm gonna
like
cry.
it's like almost seeing you come into who you were all this time, hiding behind this weight,
Yeah,
and it's just like now having that release to be who you are.
it is
And it's
nice.
so cool to see. I'm like,
You know
oh,
what's
little
so
Gabriela.
no, don't cry. Or yes, crying is welcome. I was gonna say that it was really funny because when I started taking my meds, it was in the ones that I'm on now. It was in November, and it was like it was so funny because I like forced myself, like your brother forced me to do like music and sing in front of people,
I like how
and
you said my brother instead of your cousin. Like,
yeah.
like
My
displace him
whatever.
on me.
Your brother.
Your brother.
Your brother. He forced me to go and like audition, and I did that one like singing thing on the rock ensemble. And it's so funny because like even the people in my class for that noticed the difference of when I started taking my medication. And it was insane because when I first started out, I would sing like this. Like that's how I would sing. Like I would just be so quiet. And then by the time like the meds started kicking in, like I wasn't so scared anymore. So that stuff really does help. It
Yeah,
helps.
it's crazy. Like, it's like I could live a life just struggling and trying to figure it out, or I can actually get the help. And I mean, again, like what we went through is not something that's going to be the answer for somebody else. I know
Yeah.
this is your story. Like, I've never had to take medications. Maybe
Yeah.
I did, maybe, but that wasn't a conversation I had. No, maybe I don't know. But that wasn't conversation that I had. It was more of like the talk therapy and almost different kinds of talk therapy, really, because again, like you were talking about, just like experiencing it in the body. My body talks so much, and not like the nasty gassy stuff, but but like I'm realizing because sometimes it's not like my thoughts, it's just like like you were saying, like tension. I would feel it a lot in like my gut and my chest, like it get
Yeah.
really tight, or like my jaw. I had to really read how my body was carrying tension, and noticing that there was a lot of times I would hold tension in my jaw, and it's just like words that I wouldn't allow myself to express, you know, like just holding everything. And as I went to counseling, and just every 2 weeks, just having somebody outside of my world to be like, no, you weren't wrong. Like that was, no, you're on the right path. Just because a lot of the messaging of like, you're growing, you're changing, you're doing different things. The people that are around you want to bring you back to what is normal in their worldview, like coming back
Mm-hmm.
to just how we grew up. And that was challenging, because it's like, am I wrong? Am I the one that's off? Um am I the one that needs to be corrected? Because that's how I feel. And feeling that guilt and that shame, and just having somebody to be like, no, or like even check me, because sometimes I'm like, no, these people are like violent, da, 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 da. And be like, no, wait, can you see what you did and how you influenced that situation? I'm like, you know, and just seeing how I kind of influence that situation, and how I portray myself, and being blocked off and cold and like all defensive impacts other people. It's just,
Mhm.
it was really nice, and it continues to be nice, of having that person to check me,
Yeah.
and help me see the gaps,
Yeah.
that I miss. Because I know that's one thing of like, I'm back in counseling, I'm in counseling still, because there's a lot of things that I have to work on still, just from like complex trauma of like my history,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing how that influences me. But realizing that I can know all the skills, I know the skills, I practice the skills, I do mindfulness, I do all my coping skills, I use all the boundary setting, I do all the communication stuff, but there's things that are stored in your body. You know, I can know them all up in here, and I can even role play them with the people that I work with, and teach them how to do it. When I'm calm, I'm able to do it. Logically, I know how to do it. And I think that's a lot of things from family, of just not getting it. It's like, but you're smart. You know, I even had a counselor who told me that. She's like, how am I supposed to counsel you? You're smart. Um, but it's not a intellect thing. It's a very lived somatic experience
Yeah.
of, in the moment when I'm triggered, even though I may know the skills, I freeze up
Yeah.
because of the trauma I lived,
Wow.
or I run, because that's how my body just responds automatically, and it keeps
Mm-hmm.
me in that, almost like what you were saying, that weight that like keeps me
Yeah.
chained, a little bit. And recognizing that there's ways I can work with my body to allow it to relax, so I'm not automatically in fight, flight, freeze kind of
Mm-hmm.
survival. i
Yeah.
can I can work with my body, so that way, oh, all of those skills that I know up in my head,
Mm-hmm.
I can actually apply them. And there's
Yeah.
that gap that we don't realize, that I can know things and not be able to apply it in the moment, because my body is still responding in survival.
Yeah.
um, and it's really nice to have just somebody be able to coach you through that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the fact that, honestly, I see like our families moving towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that we're still struggling, I with a lot of different people, and everybody's on their own path, of the fact that we can have more of these conversations,
Yeah.
and just like almost a curiosity of it, of
Yeah.
like, wait, help me understand what anxiety is, instead of like that shutting down, like you're okay. It's like,
Yeah.
help me understand, what is it, because I don't get it, you know. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I had like the conversation with mommy the other day, and I was like, ooh, yes.
Let me tell you what it is.
Yeah, because genuinely didn't get it, doesn't
Yeah.
understand, like doesn't make sense in her head.
Yeah.
But you know, having that openness to just be genuinely curious, instead of shutting it down because I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't get it, help me understand. uh,
Yes, yes, that's amazing. That's why I like it when people are open like that, because that's what we need. We need more sympathy, more empathy. Like, put yourself in my shoes. I put myself in your shoes, and then we can come to an understanding. And that's why I respect my dad so much, because he even though he doesn't get the crazy, I mean, not crazy, but that's not the right word to use. But he doesn't get he doesn't get the anxiety that I get to the level that I get. Um, he still tries. Like before, he was struggling, but now he's understanding a lot more of just sitting down and listening, um, and that means so much to me. And that's just, I wish more people could do that instead of just saying this is all in your head,
Yeah.
because even though it's in your head, it's still your body, and it does affect you. And like going back to what you were saying, especially too, um getting to that place, to being able to, you know, control those nerves in a way, it takes
And that's the
forever.
thing, like,
Yeah.
we can't control it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that we learn. It's like, oh, it's my feelings. I could just control it. I just got to control it. I just got to control it. But the
Yeah.
truth is, that's not our thinking part of our brain.
Yeah.
That's our animalistic instincts. You don't get to choose how your body responds,
Yeah.
not consciously. You know, it's like what I can do is learn how to manage it
Yes,
and
that's what I mean.
ride the
Yes.
wave, but
Yeah. Yeah, like breathe it out. Breathe into it like in yoga.
you remember when I took you to yoga and you're like, oh my God, this helps me so much with my anxiety. Oh
It
wow. I didn't-
it really, hey, it does. It does. And to this day, I breathe into the pain in here. Like you
I
breathe
laugh because
into
it's
it.
funny. I just remember that day, but it's like, again, like that mind body connection is like, oh wait, there's there's just so many memories stored in our body that are
Mhm.
not our conscious mind. So
Yeah.
yoga can, like, it's one way to kind of bring that connection, and those little affirmations, just like, oh
Yeah.
wait.
And going back to what you were saying about the whole having your therapist help you through those physical feelings,
Yeah,
that's so helpful. And I think what helped me get to that point, because I realized that I wasn't able to even
yeah.
get to the point where the therapist could help me, because I was missing that component. I was just so I keep thinking of the word altera, but I know that's not the right word, because those are the words that we're like put in our head.
But altera, yeah, you're like
Yeah.
heightened, you're like anxious, you're
Yeah,
aroused
you're
in
so yeah, anxious. Sorry, Spanglish, whatever.
English. That's why we do things.
Yeah. So like you're just so anxious to the point where it's almost like everything around you can't hear it. It's like there's a wall. So like I'm not saying that medication is the only solution, because it's definitely not. I think it's definitely both components together, because I wouldn't have been able, because I was in counseling for a very long time, like 2 or 3 years before I started taking meds, because I just wasn't getting to that point where other people were able to get. And it was so frustrating, but it was because, there was a chemical imbalance that I needed to look into before to make it a little bit easier to be able to practice the things I learned in counseling.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the way you describe it is like it is. Again, everybody has their own needs. Everybody's at different levels. It's almost
Yeah.
like, all right, you and I both go to the doctor because we have a similar pain, but you come out with a broken bone, and I come out with, like, I don't know, some other thing. We're not gonna have the same treatment, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but we're not gonna have the same treatment because our journeys and our issues may be different, even though they may appear the same.
Yeah.
Um, but being a counselor and having that talk with people, because everybody has their own choice, and being able to have a professional really evaluate you and see what is going on is so imperative. But the way I kind of describe it and tell people is just like, look, like, you can, it is possible to go through counseling without medication. It is possible to just take medication without ever going to counseling. And it's a possibility of using both. And I compare it to, like, if I was in a car accident and I broke my knee. I can go through physical therapy in order to relearn how to walk. I can do it without medication. It's going to be a lot more painful and it's going to take me a lot longer, but I can do it. You know,
Yeah.
I can decide to take the pain medication without going to physical therapy. It helps alleviate the pain, but it's going to be difficult for me to walk if I don't go to therapy. I'm just going to be, I have a little limp, but I'll be pain free. Or I can use both of them together. I can take the pain reliever so that way when I'm doing physical therapy, it doesn't hurt as much and I can really strengthen my skills and my muscle again and relearn how to walk. So that way it becomes shorter and easier to deal with.
Wow.
Again, it depends on each person. Not everybody's going to have the same mix. But it's almost an easier way to understand it because when we talk about like mental health or emotional health, it's harder to understand because we don't see it. You look fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes having that physical health metaphor is easier to understand.
That is so, I've never thought of it like that, and I love that comparison so much.
Yeah.
So good.
Hey, girl, I be studying.
You're doing so good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm dancing, but
but it's awesome. Awesome. It's awesome. Like I like having these conversations, and I think the more we educate ourselves, like our loved ones continue to educate themselves, and it's nice to recognize that, like sometimes you do need just that check outside to help you realize that you're on the correct path.
Yeah.
And again, it's a generational thing too, of recognizing they're doing the best of times to help us in the way that they know. This new generation, we're coming into being more accepting and open about counseling and therapy, and the fact that therapy has evolved too. So it makes it a little bit easier to get the help that you need without all of the stigma. But it's nice to have these conversations.
Yeah, this was so nice. I like this.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's do our gratitude. What is like a gratitude? Something that you're thankful for or that went well for you today.
Today or in this conversation?
Whatever floats your boat, bro, because like I ain't got no rules.
Okay, listen. I went on a walk today and it was amazing. I went on a walk and it was okay. My headphones, I had them for a while and then they died and I was like, oh man, they died. And I was so frustrated because I'm like, now I have to listen to like whatever's happening. But listen, it was
present.
Yeah, exactly. But I heard the birds chirping. I could hear my feet hit the pavement, and it was just so relaxing. And like usually I'm a lot more tuned with nature, but I guess I was just in a mood to listen to music. But I'm really happy that it unexpectedly stopped because in that moment I could just focus on the sun hitting my skin. It was a beautiful day. I saw a bunch of kids fighting. That's beside the point. But it was just nice. They were fine. They were fine. I saw an old lady and an old man fighting too, but I was grateful for all of that because it was just
That's
so
life.
grounding and amazing, and I was just enjoying the day. Anyway, what are you thankful for?
Girl, you went with it. That was woof. You took me on a little ride there. Picture. What am I grateful for today? That's a good one. Oh, I almost forgot this was part of the day because my days seem so long and they seem like they're repeating.
You're
but
busy.
Man, girl, whew, I think I'm working more during like this social distancing thing than before.
A lot of people are saying that.
But I had a break between some appointments and clients, and this is what I do like about working from home, that I can have a break and like be home and be like in my area, in my hood. So what I did It was nice because like I came out of my room where I see my clients on internet and on video chat, and like my sisters were here, Ana Maria and Alicia were here, so we went and like we went to the lake. I took some pictures. I climbed a tree because I have issues.
That sounds like fun.
Girl, I climbed. There's a tree that it seems like fell down, so it's like a big tree and it's like almost a log, like almost like a bridge over into the lake.
Ooh.
So, and there's like all of the Spanish moss coming down, and so I'm like, I'm climbing over the tree.
I'm scared.
Are
Did
you
fall?
scared? I didn't fall.
Okay.
No, I'm climbing over the tree, and like it was nice just to be in nature and do crazy things, and then like do a little yoga out there with my family, and then come back home and see my next client. These are the things that people don't know about me as their counselor.
Hey, there's a different side to everyone.
These are things that, confessions of a therapist. At least
Oh, that sounds so good. I would read that book.
Oh man, girl.
Your therapist is a badass. Oh no.
Yeah, I kicked my desk. That was that.
Yay. Well, this was awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank me for I thank myself for being here.
Please thank me for being here, Amarilis.
That's not what I meant. Thank you all for being here.
I love this. Yes,
I don't know if this is going to be like we are here. And join us next time for weird conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye. Peace.